So let's talk about the different materials that we're going to have in here. I'm just going to change back now to our 3D view, and you can see my house is sitting in here and my house objects are all down here. I'm going to pick on the first one that comes to mind is the roof. It's the obvious one I'm going to fix. As I click on the roof, you'll notice that something happens up here, and if we click over in here, we'll see that there are three materials applied to the roof. And I remember applying the red roof, so that's the red roof there. Let's actually call that the red, the top, the roof top. And I'm going to click through here, and this one here is the ceiling. I never remember how to spell that, so I just spell it how I think. And this oak trim here, that's a trim, so that's going to be a trim color. Now I think you'll find that if I affect any of these, it's going to affect more than one thing because I applied the same material to a number of different things. The materials are defined, I'll pull this one down here, using this section here called the node section. You can see there's a lot of complicated boxes that are joined by lines. Each one of these things is called a node. Now we're talking about the trim here, so we're going to make the trim just a light colored brown to begin with. We're going to delete all of this, so I'm going to press function and delete on the Mac, and that's gone. So there's nothing there, and you can see that that's gone green, and everything else has gone black that had that applied to the trims around the windows. So basically I'm now going to add a few nodes in this node editor, and the first thing I'm going to do is a material, because it must have a material. I can zoom in on this, by the way, move around. So the material must have some sort of surface attached to it. So I'm going to add a shader to that, and the shader I'm going to add is a diffuse shader. So where's the diffuse shader? There it is there. I'm going to add that one there. I'm going to drag from here BSDF to surface like so. Let's change it back to white. Now I'll actually just make it brown by going into the red zone down here and then dragging that down. As you drag it down, it gets darker and more brownish. Make it a slightly lighter brown over there. There it is. It's a light brown, sort of tanny color. Might go down a bit further into the orange to make it a nicer brown, and you can see that those have now gone brown around there. So this is my first shader that I've got, the trim, and they're all affected by the same thing because I use the same thing in, or I use the same texture in Fusion 360. Let's just do the rooftop now. The rooftop, once again, I've got all this mess here. Let's just press function delete to delete all that. I'm going to add on the rooftop, once again, same thing, an output, material output, and I'm going to add, once again, a shader, and that shader is once again going to be a diffuse shader. I'm going to connect those two together, and I'm going to change that to a light red. Okay, so I've got that working. I need to do the same to my ceiling. It's still a mess. Ceiling I'm just going to leave white, but I still need to do all that. So I'm going to need my output, material output, and I'm going to need an add shader, and this time I'm going to use a diffuse shader. Drag that in there. Just sort of make it slightly less white than. There it is there. Slightly off white, so I can see that I've done it. And I'm going to work my way through all of these objects up here until I know that I've changed them all. So you can see that the architrave is done. The deck needs a color, so function delete, add node, add output, material output, add a shader, and my shader for this one, ooh, not a shader, just not straight shader. I'm going to function delete that, add a diffuse shader. Oh man, I'm pressing the wrong things left, right, and center. That's a glass shader. Add shader, diffuse shader, going to make this a nice, really dark brown, almost black. There we go. And I'm going to keep going until I've changed everything I need to change. So when it comes to the windows, they're slightly different. Basically going to go function delete to the same thing. I'm going to add a material, I'm going to add an output, material output, and this time I'm going to add a shader. I'm going to add a glass shader, and if I pull that into there, instantly my windows are going to go clear as. I'm just going to put a slight green tint in them so you can see that they're there, and you can see over here what it's going to look like. I'll probably bring that color back into the white sort of slightly blue tint. There it is, and you should be able to therefore see through that when you render it. So if you're having trouble seeing through that with rendering, you can actually change this to rendering, and it does a really quick sort of render, and you can see that that has basically started to show that up nicely. It can take a while on a slower computer to do this, but basically that's what we're looking at there through our camera. It's probably now time to do an actual render now that I'm happy with that. I'm going to change this back to material, otherwise it's going to keep on trying. So my materials are all done. I've worked right through all of them. I don't think I've missed any. You'll know if you miss any because they'll be, when you find them, there'll be like a lot of mess in here. So I'm now going to go render and render image, and it'll render down here. Take probably for me about 3 minutes this time round. It has got glass in it. Glass does actually add a bit of extra time to our render, but we can still have that working effectively for us. And let's see what it looks like at the other side. So there it is, all done. I'm going to go image and save image as well. Initial render 02 this time. Working my way up. Save as image. And there we go. I've got that looking quite nice. I'm pretty happy with that. You might want to do a slightly different angle for each particular thing. You can see there I've got the reflections in the window happening, but you might want to add some water in just so you know you get a different view. Let's just go back here. 3D view, because you've got the camera locked to the view, you can sort of change it there. Sometimes nice to look up, sometimes nice to have a bit of a drone look, like as if you're in a drone. You don't want to go too far out though, because it will actually show up the extent of your map, which is not huge. I actually quite like that sort of angle with a bit of a tree in the background and some water, but totally up to you. So basically that's what we've got. It's still not looking great because you do actually need to put some textures in. You can't just leave it with flat colors. It's just never quite going to look right until you start putting some basic textures in.